Standard 2, Benchmark 2. Assess the influence of significant people or groups on Reconstruction. As always, your task for the tutorial is to note the 5 things to know. This could be people, laws, events, etc. 3 concepts to recognize. Concepts are like big ideas, historical developments, relationships between events. And finally, use those notes to complete a check for understanding. You want to be familiar with the groups of people who influenced the Reconstruction era, both positively and negatively. Let's start with the Freedmen's Bureau. It was established by Congress to help millions of formerly enslaved persons by providing food, housing, and medical aid alongside establishing schools and offering legal assistance. Carpetbagger was a term used by Southerners to describe Northerners who came to the South, perceived to be exploiting the South for their own financial and political gain. A carpetbag is another word for luggage. Radical Republicans were a group of politicians within the Republican Party who were considered to have more extreme views. They wanted to guarantee certain rights and protections for newly freed persons, while also harshly punishing former Confederate leaders. Over 2,000 Black Americans held office during Reconstruction. They served at all levels of government and were influential because they contributed to the passage of civil rights laws. A group that would be actively working against the progress of newly freed persons was the Ku Klux Klan, an organization of white Southerners who committed acts of terror toward African Americans and their allies, often wearing white hooded robes. Pause here if you need to document this information. Let's look at the key concepts to recognize for this benchmark. First, you need to understand which groups were most politically active in advocating for the rights of newly freed persons, Radical Republicans, and Black politicians. Second, this benchmark calls for an understanding of organizations providing economic aid to formerly enslaved persons, such as the Freedmen's Bureau. And third, you should be able to recognize that in spite of the advocacy of other groups, the culture of the South continued to consist of sectional biases and racism. Pause here if you need to document this information. Hopefully you've been reflecting on what you do and do not remember in terms of the 5 things to know and 3 concepts to recognize. Now that you've had a brief review, answer the question on this slide. How did people and groups influence Reconstruction?